Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! VRains episode review. This time we will be going over episode 89 of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRains, the conclusion between Windy and Soulburner, and I do want to start right off the bat by saying I was completely wrong about this duel. Now, to be fair, this was a very hard-to-predict duel. I felt that way the entire time. I know there were some people that thought Soulburner was going to win the moment it was announced, and kudos to those people because they were absolutely right, but I thought this was a very could have gone either way kind of duel, which we haven't seen too many in VRains, and it's always good when Yu-Gi-Oh! Has duels like that I find very hard to predict, because usually if I find them very hard to predict and I don't really know what's going to happen, it just adds to the overall drama of the duel, and this duel was good. Overall, I definitely don't think it was at the level of Spectre and Lightning, personally, but it was still good. I did think that Windy was going to win if I had to pick one of them, which I did. I thought it was going to be Windy. I was completely wrong. Honestly, at this point, I have no idea if Soulburner and Playmaker are ever going to lose. I really do believe that. I don't know who they're going to lose to unless they duel each other. There were a few interesting things to take from this episode, mostly towards the end. I found it funny because the Spectre and Lightning duel, in terms of the plot affection, was at the very end, you know, how it's going to affect the plot, and the plot affection of this duel was not only the lost incident victim being hit by the car, learning more about him, but it was at the very end of this duel as well, and that is when Flame decides to take in Windy. I think it's interesting because Lightning was going to just let Windy die this time. He's like, you know what, I saved you once, and it's like the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That's basically what Lightning was thinking about in this moment, because he says, you know, there's no cure for stupidity or for whatever. I forget the exact word that he used, but he basically said, I saved you once, bro. You gave into your anger against Revolver. You failed. I might have given into my anger against Spectre, but hey, I won. You gave into your anger again, lost your composure against Flame and Soulburner. There's no saving you. I'm just going to let you die. I'm not going to be fooled again thinking that you're worth it, basically. And so Windy is being absorbed by flames, and I think, which is kind of funny since obviously the whole theme of that duel was trying to blow out Soulburner's flame, which he was unable to do. And he's being burnt to death, basically, and Flame says, I'm going to take you in, and Windy is yelling at him not to, saying that he's never going to forget his hatred and that he's going to curse Flame. So Flame takes in the data, and I thought it was very interesting because they really put an emphasis on the word curse. Flame says, or not Flame, Windy says, I'm going to curse you, Flame. Flame takes in the data, and then it shows a close-up of Soulburner saying, curse, and then Flame goes, AIs don't have curses. And then the episode just ends. And I don't know, very similar to how the Lightning and Spectre duel ended, where Lightning seemingly hints at maybe Spectre being used to fight for the Evil Ignis side, to fight for his team, when he says even the weak have their uses. There was a very big emphasis on the curse that might be placed on Flame and Soulburner. Whether this curse is more figurative or a literal curse, we're just going to have to wait and see, but I find it interesting that Flame took in Windy, because now all Bowman needs to do is defeat Flame, defeat Soulburner, or Lightning defeats them, and most likely Windy and Flame, it'll be like a 2-for-1 package deal, will go inside of Bowman. We don't know how that transfer is going to work, by the way. We just know that Lightning's vision is to capture the 6 Ignis, or to get the 6 Ignis within Bowman. We don't know if Bowman, I imagine Bowman will be able to absorb the data very similarly to how Flame just absorbed Windy's data. Another very interesting thing, and I know I've brought it up a lot, and I know people are probably like, oh, Dylan, it's getting annoying. The very beginning of April, which will probably be like episode 96, 97, is when a new opening is going to start, and most likely a new arc or a new season is going to start. So considering we have Blue Maiden versus Bowman, after this duel ends, we're probably only going to have 4 episodes to deal with Playmaker, to deal with Revolver, to deal with Lightning, to deal with Flame and Soulburner, who still are alive, and to deal with either Bowman or Blue Maiden. And that's not even to mention the Earth Ignis, who right now is inside of Go, who is inside of Soltech. There is just no way that they can coherently wrap up everything, especially if you figure they're going to have a big final boss duel of this arc that's going to start around mid-March. That means that after the Blue Maiden and Bowman duel, we probably have 2 episodes before the final duel of the season is supposed to start, unless the season runs long and runs into opening 3, which we're probably going to get, we might even get an announcement on opening 3 before the next review, before the next episode airs, but we are really, that's why I just thought a Soulburner loss made more sense. Let me talk about my feelings on the result. I thought it would have made sense for Soulburner to lose here, which I felt like was a reason that this was a very hard to predict duel. But you know what? Windy gets what he deserves. Windy is just a villain, and to see him lose and to see him genuinely panic. It's funny, because the first time he was panicking, I think most of us knew that he was faking it. At least I knew he was faking it. I'm like, he definitely has a card in hand or an effect engrave. He'll be able to survive this attack. And what do you know? He has a card in hand that's able to survive the attack, cut the damage in half, get his life points under 1,000. Also, the parallel of dialogue was great, because once he gets his life point under 1,000, he says to Soulburner and Flame that they were too obsessed with defeating him, and that's what led to this move being possible. Well, Windy was so obsessed with destroying Soulburner and Flame's back row just to try and prove a point to Flame that if Soulburner had listened to him, they wouldn't have taken an extra 500 points of damage. And he was so obsessed with that's the reason Soulburner was able to do the move where he's able to banish his set or his trap from grave. I believe that's what happened. I believe he banished his trap, and that's the only way he could have used that trap most likely, and he was able to save himself by summoning Falco in defense position. Another thing I want to get to is, I know I'm kind of just hopping all around, which is usually what I do in dueling episodes. By the way, Windy's Link 4 was awesome. Love the name, love the summoning. It's funny because they always say you can add a random Link monster to your deck. It's always a Link monster that has to do with their archetype. Like, Playmaker is not adding that Storm Rider to his deck if he uses Storm Access. So I wish, instead of saying that it was a random monster, I wish they said like a random same type. Well, I guess there's no really easy way to word that, but you know, you really have to put a strong emphasis on the word random there and put quotations around it, because it's really not that random. But it was very cool to see Windy's Link 4 Bahamut monster. The best part about this episode was probably the XZ summon, which I haven't even touched on yet. We see, finally, Salaman Great Mirage Stalio, which, remember, this monster was shown to us, I believe, in like mid-November, a long time ago. It was the first XZ monster that any VRains deck had revealed. And of course, this was not the first one we saw. We saw Playmaker XZ summon. And yes, continuity-wise, there's maybe a little bit of a hole, and you're going to have to do some filling in the blanks yourself, because the show didn't give it to us, unfortunately, where Playmaker XZ summoned literally in the early 80s, not too long ago, and Soulburner and Blue Maiden were watching, had no idea what was going on. Soulburner clearly had no idea what an XZ was. There wasn't that much time between that duel when Playmaker versed Go and this duel when Soulburner now has an XZ monster. Of course, it's not difficult to learn how to XZ summon if you're a duelist. I'd imagine at Soulburner's caliber, I'd imagine you can learn to do it very quickly. The flaw there is, how did he get an XZ's card into his deck so quickly when he didn't even know that this was a thing? In my opinion, in my head, in my kind of canon, Flame and the Ignis are able to just generate these cards. They're more aware about all the summoning methods than the characters themselves are. They know about all the summoning methods, and so they can simply just generate cards that work for their deck. I think we saw it when I did it with Cyber's Magician earlier in the season. I think it was hinted that I put that card in Playmaker's deck, and Playmaker and him had a little bit of a conversation regarding it. And I think this just further confirms that the Ignis are these very intelligent beings, these superior duelists, and thus Flame put this card in Soulburner's deck when Soulburner inquired about it. I think that's the best explanation that we have for it. I don't think this was a case where Soulburner went to the shop, even in Link VRains, and bought it. Mainly because if that was the case, you'd imagine he would have browsed the shop before for Cyber's fire monsters, and he would have seen an XZ's monster, or he would have seen any XZ's monsters in the shop. I'd imagine all these duelists probably would have done that. So to not know what this was 8 episodes ago and to be able to utilize it now very efficiently, I think it's very safe to assume that Flame was responsible for putting this card in his deck, and the Ignis just have these powers where they can generate these kind of cards and know about the summoning methods way more than the characters do. That's my opinion on it. So unfortunately, the episode didn't give us any dialogue there. Soulburner kind of said, this is our new power, or he said something along those lines. But I think the way that he got the card 99% sure it was through flame. So, yeah, I don't really have too much of an issue there. I do wish they maybe touched on it a little bit, but it is what it is. You're not going to get every little detail, I suppose. But yeah, overall, enjoyable episode. The duel was, I don't know, I kind of liked the dialogue and the banter in the first part of this duel a little more. I thought Windy's voice changes were great. Reminds me so much of Vector. Windy is just so reminiscent of Vector. The only difference is that we don't see Windy's face, unfortunately, because he's an artificial intelligence. He doesn't have a human-like face, so he can't make the same ridiculous over-the-top looks that Vector would give back in Zexal. And the other difference is Vector was actually a decent duelist and actually defeated opponents. A little bit of a shot at Windy there, but I remember when we first met Windy way back in I can't remember the episode, 59 or somewhere around that time. I'm pretty sure it was stated that Windy was not a good duelist, that each Ignis had their own special abilities, and Windy's was that he could control data storms really well, but that he was not a very good duelist. So from that perspective, it kind of makes sense that he loses to Revolver and loses to Soulburner, and to be fair, those are two of the three best duelists in the universe. We have Blue Maiden versus Bowman, which will be a very interesting duel. We will preview that more on my new podcast, Talking Yu-Gi-Oh! Into the VRains, which live streams every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, so definitely be sure to check it out if you are around and if you do not have enough of a fill of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRains. We will be going over this duel more in depth, and we will be all making our predictions on Blue Maiden versus Bowman. All three of us, me and my two friends Nick, are 0-1 since we all picked Windy to win. The loser of that has to take the other two out to a steak dinner in New York City, so a lot riding on those predictions. But guys, definitely check that out if you want some more Yu-Gi-Oh! VRains stuff. Hope to see a few of you there. And that's pretty much going to wrap things up from my side of things. There wasn't too much to talk about regarding the plot, and yeah, I'm really excited for Blue Maiden and Bowman. I think most of us know how that duel is probably going to play out, but I'm going to remain optimistic. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, James Rose, Omni Lord, and Neko Yuu-Chan, and to my Diamond tier patrons Bouldergeist and Jesse Wood, and to my Egyptian God tier patron Syn Cloud and Chris Swan. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it and how much it truly does help out the channel. I have a special Valentine's Day themed video for you guys tomorrow, so hopefully you're all looking forward to that. I will talk to you down below on all things VRains and episode 89. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have an amazing day.